On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, Liz Truss launches her comeback with an explosive new article in the Daily Telegraph. And I share her view that Britain needs to end a culture of tax and spend. The country needs a dose of tough economic love. In my Take at 10, finally a Prime Minister who's serious about stopping the boats. Rishi Sunak showing surprise courage by threatening to axe the hated European Court of Human Rights. My Mark Meets guest is former Cabinet Minister Robert Buckland, plus tomorrow's papers and my all-star panel. We're live at 9.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Liz Truss has admitted she wasn't blameless in what happened during her time as Prime Minister, but has criticised the lack of political support from her colleagues. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph in her first major comments since leaving Number 10, the former Prime Minister claims she wasn't given a realistic chance to act on her policies. Ms Truss says she stands by her low-tax agenda, though, calling it a break from leftwards thinking within the party. She resigned after just 49 days following economic turmoil caused by her mini-budget. Well, earlier on GB News, the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, defended the government's current economic plans.
I think that Liz's instincts are very conservative in the sense that we want to see taxes, lowered over a period of time. But I think everyone recognises we've been through, hell with coronavirus, which added, £400 billion at least of expenditure. We then had a war in Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices and inflation and been very, very costly.
Police say a key witness in the search for the missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, has come forward. Officers appealed for a woman seen on CCTV wearing a yellow coat and pushing a pram in the area where the dog walker disappeared last Friday in Lancashire. Well, they've called the speculation and the abuse on social media towards the witness totally unacceptable. Forensic search and rescue specialist Peter Folding told GB News he thinks the police need to explore all the angles of where Nicola could be and not just focus on the river.
They will be looking into many other things. They'll be looking at other people within the family. They'll be looking at people who live locally, whether there's any sex attackers who live locally and things like this. I mean, we don't know. Nicola can be kidnapped and being held somewhere against her will. She might hopefully she'll still be alive. She may have just wandered off. Just with a mobile phone by a river, that's not good enough evidence for me. This needs a lot, we need to clear that river and then that can be ruled out.
The nurses' unions called on the Prime Minister to make a new pay offer in order to avoid next week's planned strikes. The head of the Royal College of Nursing, Pat Cullen, says a meaningful offer could avert the action. The NHS is facing what many are calling the biggest strike day the health service will have seen, as tens of thousands of nurses and ambulance staff in England prepare to walk out tomorrow and Tuesday. The Health Secretary's called the action regrettable, saying it will undoubtedly have an impact on patients. China says it strongly opposes the decision by the United States to shoot down a suspected spy balloon, which was thought to be carrying out surveillance of sensitive military sites. Fighter jets brought it down over the Atlantic Ocean yesterday off the coast of South Carolina. Earlier in the day, 3 airports were closed and airspace restricted in the southeast of the country after President Joe Biden had vowed to take care of it. Well, China maintains it was a weather airship which had been merely blown off course. Ukraine says it expects a major new offensive from Russia to begin later this month. Ukraine's defence minister says the West's new military supplies are unlikely to arrive in time, but says Kyiv has the resources to hold back any Russian offensive. He also promised to use long-range missiles provided by the United States to only strike targets in occupied territory rather than within Russia. It comes after a series of Russian missile strikes seriously damaged a university and a residential building in central Kharkiv overnight, injuring at least 3 people. British defence analysts, though, say Moscow has made only small advances in its attempt to encircle the city of Bakhmut, which has been the focus of Russian forces for the last few weeks. Pakistan's former president, General Pervez Musharraf, has died aged 79 following a prolonged illness. He died in hospital in Dubai, having been in self-imposed exile since 2008. Musharraf, who seized power in a coup in 1999, oversaw rapid economic growth in the country. He survived several assassination attempts, including one from Al-Qaeda and other military Islamist groups. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens, but now it is back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. When I talked about the electric car con, a load of very smug EV owners bragged about the money they were saving and how amazing their cars were, how they didn't have to pay road tax and congestion charges, and how they never had been caught short without a charger. Oh, how I returned my smugness when I see now that it is more expensive to power up your electric car. Petrol is actually cheaper, even at its current extortionate rate, which the powers that be clearly want us to get used to, so the transition from one extortion to another will be smoother, give or take the extra 40 grand or so required to supposedly upgrade. But it seems once again, and very predictably, something has gone wrong with the math. Something you and I knew was blatantly obvious. If the government are to meet the decarbonisation target in 2035, when the sale of all new petrol and hybrid vehicles will be banned in Europe, in the UK that date is actually 2030, it would mean that according to their own figures, that 80% of the miles driven would have to be by electric vehicles. So that's 4 out of every 5 miles, a 21-fold increase in just 12 years. And if that happens, pigs will fly first, and let's not even talk about charging points. Only then will the UK meet the dreaded net zero target by 2050. Even the electric car supply chains are unable to facilitate the government's target. There aren't even any fully electrified HGVs being produced to the scale. And with the cost of living crisis and spiralling inflation, who do they think can afford these things when the incentives to purchase them are crumbling? And when you've got the boss of BP, Bernard Looney, announcing that he plans to cut back on renewable energy products and stick with oil and gas investments after they raked in huge profits again, I think the words he used were dial back on the green energy. And he's concerned about the lower returns from renewables like wind and solar. It's beginning to sound like the energy giants aren't prepared to support their ideology either. Even councils are rallying against this nonsense. Sadiq Khan's plans for low-traffic neighbourhoods, which would only push the problem elsewhere and destroy businesses, has met heavy resistance. From what I can see, the government are at odds with the people of this country. Whilst we all support the notion of cleaner air and a healthier environment, I, for one, am not happy with the way we're being forced to supposedly achieve this. It's time for them to come clean, tell the truth. This ridiculous goal of net zero is completely unachievable. Be honest with the country. We're not stupid. We are all looking at our homes thinking, where the hell are we going to charge an electric vehicle? We don't have time in our lives to waste like that. We're working 10 to the dozen trying to keep our heads above water. And that's before we've even considered how we're supposed to afford all of this. It's time for the government to rethink this ideological madness. By their own calculations, it is clearly unachievable and frankly ridiculous. Save face and scrap net zero, or prepare from an embarrassing but predictable retreat. Right, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take Truss back? The former Prime Minister was in power for just 44 days. In fact, I think the lettuce lasted longer. Then she resigned. She's now claimed that she wasn't given a fair chance to enact her policies. And her mini-budget was used as a scapegoat for the issues with the economy that were already taking shape. So would you give her another chance? Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. Russian expert Danny Armstrong will be in the studio. According to reports, Russia and Ukraine have engaged in a prisoner swap, meaning dozens of soldiers were able to return to their homeland. I'll also be getting the latest news stateside, where the US military have shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon. Then stay tuned at 5 o'clock. It's this week's Outside. Now, my special mystery celebrity. She's known for being part of a very popular girl group that came on the scene in the late 90s. She was also crowned Queen of the Jungle in 2004. Can you guess anyone? Who might that be? That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think of everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also author and journalist. They've taken you out. Oh, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly.
How can you ignore Danny?
I know, you couldn't miss him, could you? I mean, as if.
Thank goodness.
So early into the show as well.
Straight in there.
Straight in there.
Danny, you are a car
dealer.
Salesperson.
Dealer. Yes, I'm a car dealer.
Would you buy a used car from Danny?
Is that the question of the day?
That is one of them, yeah.
I would.
You would turn it.
Of course I would. Yeah.
At least you know where to bring it back.
Of course I would.
I sold a car to a guy from Braintree, is it, in Essex?
Braintree in Essex.
The only reason that he came up to the Midlands to buy a car was because of ULEZ expanding with Mayor Khan in London. And
oh, God.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And the guy was furious because he didn't want to part exchange. Anyway, so enough of that. Electric cars, I wouldn't buy them. No, they've plummeted in price.
Right.
Because generally speaking, the used car market has lost complete confidence in their ability to get from A to B without a cock-up. There was a story over Christmas, millions of people on the roads, and I think 4 or 5% of the cars on the road were electric. And all of a sudden, this is what everybody with an iota of common sense knew was coming. Then you were going to have a lot of... with just a tiny grain of sense, you knew you were going to have the perfect storm of charging these cars when there's 3 or 4 charging portals and there's 30 or 40 cars wanting to charge. And the thing is, when I fill up my car with diesel, it takes 5 minutes. If you want to fill up your Tesla in Cumbria and get down to London or
you
Cornwall...
won't make it, first of all, will you?
No, it takes 45 minutes. and the car prices have plummeted. I wish, now listen, you were correct to distinguish between the EU and the UK, Nana. For some reason, in 2020, Boris Johnson said, guess what, great news, I am going to bring forward the ban on petrol and diesel cars to 2030. Almost like a bonus, the benefit of Brexit. And I thought to myself, why? The rest of the European Union are banning them 5 years later. I really think that whoever is in charge of the next election, as you intimated, Nana, needs to get a grip and almost reflect on what society thinks, rather than this ideological drive to net zero. I think they should put it back 5 years to streamline with the rest of Europe. And then we can have a conversation about 2050.
What do you think, Christine? Well, I think they should scrap it altogether, but that's another story.
Yes.
So this electric car business is a complete nonsense. Nobody in their right mind would buy an electric car. Most people who've got them wouldn't have bought them without the fact that they're deeply subsidised. The market is so distorted, so everybody else is paying for these people to have their electric cars. You know, they don't pay road tax, they don't pay congestion charge,
For now.
etc. For now. But I think I call it the Benny Hill policy. Do you remember Benny Hill, the fastest milkman in the West?
Used to run around,
because he had an electric milk cart.
Used to follow a load of topless women.
For things like milk delivery and buses, for example, in congested... Shut up, you two. In congested zones, electric vehicles...
That's it. I can imagine you actually being chased by Benny Hill back in the day.
Oh, I was.
I can imagine that.
But no, seriously, electric vehicles for things like that are highly sensible, etc., etc. But to expect people to convert to electric cars to the extent that the government expects them to do it is absolutely... I mean, they're bonkers. The people who can afford them are the people who've got their own charging points at home and the people who are running around in, congested areas.
Well, they've got drives, haven't they?
But for long distances. The battery technology is not there yet. And what these smug people in their electric cars forget is that who is mining the precious metals that they need in their batteries.
Exactly.
What is happening to...
Exactly.
There is another... I hesitate to call it slave labour, but virtually slave labour in parts of the world where their components for their precious batteries come from.
Well, that's the problem as well. There's supply chain issues. But you've got to think about this. If we follow the actual supply chain, where it starts with all the electronic components...
Lithium and
the
stuff.
lithium, the cobalt, the things that they're mining... How is that happening? What are these mines like? Is it another... Are we heading towards another, those fast clothing chains, the way they treat some of their, some of the outlets that they get their stuff from? And my other worry is that, frankly, they don't make any sense because I don't have a space to charge it. I came out of my house today, my neighbour said to me, oh, God, she goes, our cars, because my car's a little beat-up Citroen C1, I love it, it's so good. I think it's 178,000 miles now, I know. Yeah, anyway, so my wonderful C1, there it is. And she goes, our cars are worth more than we paid for them. And I said, really, what, my beat-up? She goes, yeah, nobody wants to get rid of them. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do with my car. I'm doing her voice if she's watching. But she said, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I can't afford it. And this is just my neighbour talking to me about her car because somebody had scratched her car and scratched mine and whatever. And we're going on about we don't know what to do.
But the trouble is that the politicians are building up trouble for the future. They always do it. I mean, it was, what was his name? Cameron and Clegg, who failed to build nuclear power stations when they were in power, so they've left us with this problem now. We haven't got enough nuclear power. What we should be doing is opening up the coal mines. We should be getting more out of the North Sea. We should be doing all that sort of thing, not saying everybody's got to go electric.
But what about the air pollution? The air pollution, I mean, I spoke to Rosamund Kisser-Deborah. Her daughter died from air pollution. This is a terrible situation that we're dealing with. Danny, I mean,
so was the air pollution directly? Was that the only reason?
Well, that was what was put on the certificate. She was actually the first person to have that.
She's the girl in London, yes.
So so my thoughts are, I am mindful of that because I met Rosamund. She's an amazing woman. And what she's fighting for is to have cleaner air. So I understand that. Well, what I'm concerned about is there no way that the fossil fuels and things can be used so that they are cleaner?
There is a compromise, and it's called a hybrid petrol car.
Yeah.
But for some reason...
That's what we have.
Yeah, but for some reason that is going to be banned in 2030 and in Europe 2035. Now, hybrids are perfect for driving around city centres like London or Birmingham or Coventry without actually polluting the area. Yeah. So that poor girl... The apple of that poor woman's eye. If the city streets of London were populated with hybrid cars, then that poor girl, I don't know, she may not be dead. She may be alive because you are running on battery power and the car engine is gently charging it as you are running. But for some reason, the politicians, the ideologues with this, they have banned hybrid. And that would be a compromise, in my view.
They are encouraging at the moment. I mean, one of the reasons why we got a hybrid, we needed to change anyway, we can't afford just to change on a whim, was because it meant we didn't have to pay the congestion charge. And ULEZ,
that's
not congestion, the ULEZ coming into London.
Changed that.
So they're encouraging people to have these hybrids, but not forever.
No. That's the crazy thing about it, because they are, in the city centres, they're battery-powered, which is what they want.
There's a place for electric cars, and it is not throughout the whole country on long journeys. It's small journeys, you know, buses.
Yeah.
But my thing is also that the target that they set is totally unrealistic, and I think they need to come clean about this. They know, even their own figures, it was the Department of Transport that did this survey to find out that what they actually need, and it turns out that 4 out of the 5 miles that we'd be needed to reach that target, we'd have to be doing that. So 80% of the miles would have to be done in electric cars. It's just not, we're not there. We're nowhere near it.
And they're not building enough power charging stations.
No.
They're supposed to. There was an article in the Telegraph recently that said if they want to hit their target of 300,000 power station charging points, by 2030, they need to, instead of building 800 a month, they need to build 3,000 a month. Over the next, however, 7 years. Wow. That's 84 months.
What they need is, and I'm sure this is what will happen, that cars will have 2 batteries and you charge along using one, and then when that's exhausted, you switch to the other, and meanwhile, the first one charges. So they swap from one to the other, and it just happens. You don't need an external charging point.
Well, maybe.
That's the technology we need.
Well, Christine, they need you at the helm. That was pretty
Elon
good.
Musk over there.
Christine Musk. Right, with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come at 5. It's that Outside. My celebrity secret guest. She is a singer. Yes, she's also a celebrity something winner. So I'm a celebrity winner. Yes. Shh. And she's a mother of 5. Have you guessed? Come on. Right, stay tuned. Up next, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you take Truss back? The former Prime Minister resigned after just 44 days in power, and today she's claimed that she wasn't given a realistic chance to implement her tax-cutting agenda. So would you give her another chance? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me. I've got a poll up right now asking, would you take Truss back? Cast your vote now. Don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. I just see an elbow coming in. Keep your hands to yourself, get back. Sorry, I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we're discussing the electric car con. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Beverly says, Nana, I agree, electric cars are massive cons. Ian says, I've been driving EVs since 2014. I like the way they drive, and I'm not a climate alarmist. One thing you haven't considered is the electricity supply, and there just isn't enough electricity on the grid to charge all the EVs. And in times when we need to use coal to meet demand, then the EVs are effectively coal-powered. Well, that's it. That is the point. I'm glad you've made it, and you're an EV driver. Yes, I did miss that. Thank you. Paul says, hi, Nana. One question I have is, who's going to buy a second-hand electric car? Battery life is limited and costs hundreds, if not thousands of pounds to replace. No one in their right mind is going to do that. Exactly. Thank you very much. And, who's this? Another one. Darryl says, Nana's monologue was spot on regards to net zero nonsense. Shame the politicians won't listen and be honest. Yeah, I wish they would just come clean. It's clearly not. They're not going to hit the targets. Well, if you just join me, welcome on board. It's time now for our Great British Debate, and I'm asking, would you take Truss back? The former Prime Minister, who infamously resigned after just 44 days in office, has claimed that she was not given a realistic chance to enact her policies. Now, Truss stood down after her mini-budget was branded a disaster for sparsing the OBR findings and failing to recognise the implications for pension funds. Now, although Truss remains adamant that her budget was the right way forward for Britain, the Business Secretary Grant Shapps believes her ideas were correct in principle, but just not the right time.
I think that Liz's instincts are very conservative in the sense that we want to see taxes, lowered over a period of time. But I think everyone recognises we've been through, hell with coronavirus, which added, £400 billion at least of expenditure. We then had a war in Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices and inflation and been very, very costly.
Well, you're not wrong. It has been extremely costly. But was Liz Truss's policies, even sounds like he was actually saying that maybe they were such a good idea. It's not the sort of thing they were saying at the time. So after 100 days of sleaze, scandals, sackings and a channel crossing crisis where Brits are also paying higher taxes under the leadership of Rishi Sunak, it appears that several Tory backbenchers are prepared to get their knives out again. Oh, for goodness sake. As the 1922 committee will consider a rule change to allow a no-confidence vote in Sunak if the party suffers badly in the May local elections. Yeah. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take Truss back? I'm joined now by former Minister for Europe and writer Dennis McShane, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy, former editor of The Labourist Peter Edwards and director of Car 26 Lois Perry. Right, I'm going to start with you, Belinda de Lucy. Trussonomics, apparently people are now saying they were actually quite good, but she just didn't quite do it right.
Yeah, well, Liz Truss did make mistakes. I didn't agree with everything she did or said, especially with the liberalisation of immigration to help economic growth. And the timing wasn't brilliant either, and the delivery wasn't brilliant either. But I think that the centre of her mini budget for growth, the key policies, like, for example, not raising corporation tax, which is what Rishi wants to do. She says in her article she saw that as being counterproductive. I agree with her totally. What we need, and what we needed in Liz Truss that we don't have now, is a Prime Minister that has the courage to be disliked by the international stage to serve the interests of the British people. What we have with Rishi and Hunt and their wet wipe cabal is sort of those desperate to peacock on the international stage, desperate not to offend the EU and not to offend Biden, and sacrificing national applause for international applause. Liz wasn't going to do that. Liz was going to have the courage to be disliked, to really promote this country and have confidence in this country. Her article was fascinating, revealing that the government was resistant to diverging to EU law. Well, people like me have been saying that for a long time. She met with a machinery that just would not let the UK fly and flourish with Brexit. She revealed so much that there is a muscle of pro-EU supranationalism there that we can't beat.
Well, I like the way you haven't minced your words, Belinda. Dennis McShane is laughing, though, with his hands in his head. Dennis, why are you laughing?
Oh, very simply, this old excuse. It all would be wonderful if only the civil servants would obey me. A strong Prime Minister gets civil servants to obey them. Do you think Margaret Thatcher listened to bleating and whining like that? No, she got on with it. I think this is fascinating. It's a wonderful weekend. You've got this huge contest between Jeremy Corbyn and Liz Truss, each saying who was the worst prime leader of their parties. It wasn't me, Gov. I was the best leader that anybody could imagine, and they're all just eating each other alive. I mean, frankly, from a Labour point of view, I mean, this Liz Truss business this weekend is just a gift from heaven.
Well, that's all the Labour Party have been sitting doing not much themselves. Lois Perry.
Well, Margaret Thatcher had the support of her party when she was Prime Minister, and that's very, very different. I think Liz Truss made the fatal mistake of thinking that Conservative policies are actually welcome in this modern Conservative Party. And she also hadn't obviously been briefed properly, maybe deliberately, when she was doing her mini-budget about what was going on with all the dodgy dealings at the Bank of England with the LDIs and the fact that they couldn't raise interest rates when they needed to curb inflation because there would be a collapse. You know, she wasn't briefed properly at all. And, you know, I was talking to Scott Benton the other day, the MP for Blackpool, and he was saying to me that basically, you know, it's all about optics. He said, of course, the 45p cut in income tax would have raised the revenues to be brought in. But, you know, it wasn't the right optics. And that sums this up for me. It was all about optics. Actually, they're now saying that her ideas were brilliant, growth, low tax, strong economy, but, you know, not the right time. Well, when is the right time? Why are they all so wet?
Well, listen, let's bring Peter Edwards in. I'm not sure that there were dodgy dealings at the Bank of England. I have to clarify the sort of behaviour that was there. I mean, they're there to regulate us, but perhaps, you know, people didn't agree with their policies. Let's go to Peter Edwards.
Yes, I don't believe there are a moment for any dodgy dealings at the Bank of England. I think Liz Truss took on the quote-unquote establishment, but to suggest the establishment is left-wing is nonsense. The Treasury is independent. The OBR was set up by the austerity Chancellor George Osborne. And remember, it was a Conservative Party that turned on Liz Truss. And they're not left-wing either.
No, they really are. This current Conservative Party is extremely left-wing, and so is the civil service.
Yeah. This is all wonderful, you know, Nana. It reminds me of Harold Wilson, if Peter will. He's too young to remember. But Harold Wilson faced exactly the same problem. He had to devalue the pound, which really rocked him off course and led finally to 1970, the Tories winning, and he blamed the gnomes of Zurich, these mythical little men who were destroying the British pound. Now Liz Truss is blaming all the Trotskyists and communists in Her Majesty's Treasury. I've been there, I've worked with him. These are the most right-wing, conservative, centre-right people.
Maybe compared to you.
No, I don't think they are. Can I get Peter Edwards to finish what he was saying? Peter, sorry, please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. So there was no conspiracy. Institution of the state did what they're meant to. You can agree or disagree with the OBR, but the people who run it are incredibly sensible and serious and sober. And you say the same in the Bank of England. And I think actually Liz Truss, I feel for her personally because she was humiliated, and I think you wouldn't wish that on anyone. And her premiership will kind of hang around her neck for the rest of her life. I feel very sad personally because it's a failure. But to come back, well, try to come back after little more than 100 days and say, I was right, when the kind of the ranks of every part of the British state, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the OBR, the Treasury, and a lot of the voters and the media all said she was wrong.
No, they didn't. They didn't. In fact, Grant Shapps has only just said that actually some of the things were actually right.
He's hedging his bets now in case she does come back. He wants to keep his job. That's old Grant.
Belinda.
Yeah, we must remember that the OBR was set up by ultimate arch Remainer George Osborne, and Liz makes clear in her article that when it came to the curved furlough scheme, there was £69 billion from the public purse, 5 billion of which was completely wasted through fraudulent claims. There was no OBR forecasts that were needed then, but all apparently now they're the be-all and end-all. There is too much interference from unaccountable, unelected organisations that have strong bias towards supranational governance like the EU. There is a Remain machinery that wants us to fail, so we just become this sort of landmass of buyers and sellers with no confidence in ourselves, so that we can slowly creep back into supranational governance elsewhere. And that's what Liz Truss was saying. It's impossible to fight at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go on, quickly, you, Liz, and then final word.
Also, Liz Truss was going to deregulate all of the business laws and all of the regulations and throw out all of the European regulations that weren't required, and they didn't want that to happen. The globalists, they wanted their boy Rishi in. They certainly did not want that to happen.
Well, it did feel like that there was a push for Rishi. Final word to you, Dennis McShane.
Very simply, this is about meltdown time for the Tory party. You're coming up now to the 13th or 14th year. It happens to all parties. I love the idea it's all the EU's fault that Liz Truss was fired. I never knew the EU was so powerful so many years since we left it. The plain fact is we've had 4 very weak, poor prime ministers since David Cameron left, and he wasn't that great. And the Tory party hasn't yet come back into even keel. It needs a period in opposition. And mark my words, they will come back. They always do. They're the natural governing party of this country, but not under this weird shower of misfits.
So finally, for one-word answers then, should Truss come back? Lois?
No, she had a go.
Dennis McShane.
For the Labour Party, the sooner the better. Big Boris Johnson with her, a job share. Both of them in Downing Street at the same time to give Labour even more wins at the next election.
Edwards. Yes or no?
Liz Truss won't come back, but more dangerously, she's trying to ensure her ideas come back, which will be bad for the whole country and the economy and our jobs and our interest rates.
Finally, Belinda Lucy, briefly.
Well, I would much prefer her to Rishi because she backs the British people, but I hope that at least her ideas come back even if she doesn't.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much to all of you there. Former Minister for Europe and writer Dennis McShane, former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Luca, former editor of the Labour list Peter Edwards, and also director of Car 26 Lois Perry. Thank you. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, would you take Truss back? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Then, at 5 o'clock in Outside, my special celebrity guest is a singer, the first ever Queen of the Jungle, and a mother of 5. And she used to be married to a Westlife band member Brian McFadden. Has anyone got who she is? All of that after your latest news headlines.
It's 4:33. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Liz Truss has admitted she wasn't blameless in what happened during her time as Prime Minister, but has criticised the lack of political support from colleagues. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph in her first major comment since leaving Number 10, Ms Truss claims she wasn't given a realistic chance to act on her policies. But she said she stands by her low-tax agenda, calling it a break from leftwards thinking within the party. Ms Truss resigned after just 49 days following economic turmoil caused by her mini-budget. Earlier on GB News, the Business Secretary Grant Shapps defended the government's current economic plan.
I think that Liz's instincts are very conservative in the sense that we want to see taxes, lowered over a period of time. But I think everyone recognises we've been through, hell with coronavirus, which added, £400 billion at least of expenditure. We then had a war in Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices and inflation and been very, very costly.
Police say a key witness in the search for missing mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, has come forward. Officers appealed for a woman seen on CCTV wearing a yellow coat pushing a pram in the area where the dog walker disappeared last Friday. They've called the speculation, the police have called the speculation and abuse on social media towards those helping inquiries as totally unacceptable. The nurses' unions called on the Prime Minister to make a new pay offer in order to avoid next week's planned strikes. The head of the Royal College of Nursing, Pat Cullen, says a meaningful offer could avert the action. The NHS is facing what many are calling the biggest strike day the NHS will have ever seen, as tens of thousands of nurses and ambulance staff in England are set to walk out tomorrow and Tuesday. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay's called the action regrettable, saying it will undoubtedly have an impact on patients. Ukraine says it expects a possible major new offensive from Russia to take place this month. Ukraine's defence minister, though, says the West's new military supplies may not arrive in time. However, Kyiv has the resources to hold back any offensive. He's also promised to only use long-range missiles provided by the United States to strike targets in occupied territory rather than within Russia itself. It comes after a series of missile strikes from Russia seriously damaged a university and a residential building in central Kharkiv overnight, injuring at least 3 people. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. And now, back to Nana.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. So it is time now for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, would you take Truss back? Now, writing in the Sunday Telegraph, the former Prime Minister claimed that she was not given a realistic chance to enact her tax-cutting agenda. Now, although Liz Truss remains adamant that her budget was actually the right way forward for Britain, the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, believes her economic policies were correct in principle, but just not possible right now.
I think that Liz's instincts are very conservative in the sense that we want to see taxes, lowered over a period of time. But I think everyone recognises we've been through, hell with coronavirus, which added, £400 billion at least of expenditure. We then had a war in Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices and inflation and been very, very costly.
So after a rocky first 100 days in the job for the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, there are reports that the 1922 committee of backbenchers are now considering changing the rules to allow a no-confidence vote in Rishi Sunak. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you take Truss back? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Christine, you are, of course, you've been in the business of politics for quite some time. Liz Truss made a bit of a pig's ear of sort of policies in terms of the way she introduced them, although Grant Shapps has even said that actually some of them were probably quite good. What do you think about this?
Well, I feel sorry for Liz Truss. I think she was very badly treated by her party. She had a mandate. OK, it wasn't an electorate mandate, but it was at least a mandate from the Tory party, which is the downside more than Rishi Sunak has got. And to me, she had the right ideas, low tax and go for growth. And I think, what did Grant Shapps just say, that we're all Conservatives now? No, they're not. Half of them aren't. Half of them, to me, seemed, at least half, more than half, followers of Ted Heath rather than followers of Margaret Thatcher, and she's the one that got the country back up and running again. So I think one of the other problems with Liz Truss, it wasn't just the presentation was wrong, etc., etc. But the other thing that spooked the markets when she had her was it a mini budget or a budget with Kwasi Kwarteng, was these unfunded energy packages that she was going to hand out to the whole country. And I think that was another thing which people didn't take into account of. Suddenly, billions and billions, they didn't know how many billions, 50 billion, 100 billion, how much was this going to cost? So I think she handled it bad. And what I found extraordinary in that article in the Telegraph today was she said, Nobody told us about these, what are they called, LDIs, pension. Nobody told us. Well, you would think any half-competent politician who thinks they're good enough to be Prime Minister would know about that, and you would certainly think that somebody like Kwasi, who puts himself forward as the Chancellor, would know about them. So the idea that they weren't explicitly pointed out. But no, I think that currently the other thing on this subject is what's the Chancellor called now? Hunt. When Jeremy Hunt, well, when he was, I know, deeply forgettable.
Careful.
I hadn't even thought of that one. When he was running for leader, he was running on a low-tax policy. He was talking about reducing corporation tax to 15%. Now what is he doing? Now he's actually got the levers of power to do something. He's going to put it up to 25, which is madness. So I would like to bring back Liz Truss's taxation common sense. Whether that means bring back the person herself, no, I don't think it does. You can't do that, we're beyond that. But she had the right ideas. She was a Tory, she was a Conservative.
The problem, and she's not repentant, and I'm glad that she's unrepentant, because she was given a handful of days, 40-odd days. So she wasn't given time to enact it. My understanding of this is that it's not the Trussonomics, it's the Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR, which was set up by Cameron and Osborne some years ago, almost to act as an impartial third party to view government forecasts, budgetary forecasts. And so I think her point was that the OBR just put I think she used the word straitjacket. So they castigated, they criticised this, and then the markets reacted. It wasn't the other way round, my understanding being.
Well, she also says in the article that the OBR tends to undervalue the benefits of low taxes and supply-side reforms for economic growth and overvalue the benefits of public spending. So that's why, so in their minds, it seems that inevitably that puts a lot of pressure and puts tax up as well. So higher tax, higher spend.
But what we're doing, we're once repeating about who actually is in charge. Is it the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail?
Exactly.
Because these are civil servants, and this is, again, the thrust of her article.
Civil servants.
Well, civil servants that are mandarins they see every colour, every hue of government, but they're populated by people, according to Liz Truss, and by people with right-leaning views. They're populated by people with left-leaning views. And this was a straitjacket that she found herself being put in involuntarily. And, of course, the markets then reacted. And once the markets react, to get back to your question, Nana, should we give her another chance? Well, she's damaged goods. It's not her fault, but she's damaged goods.
Well, what about Boris then? Because if she's damaged goods, what is he? Could he come back?
Just before we leave Liz and the OBR, she didn't trust the OBR, which is why, as I understand it, why she and Kwasi Kwarteng didn't pass their budget, pass it by the OBR in advance, which of course was they were appalled. The OBR.
No, but didn't run it. She didn't run it by them.
Snubbed, and I think they took the revenge on her.
So what do you think then? So you said that you know,
Boris Johnson. If Boris Johnson came back, then I think the Conservatives will win the next election.
Win?
Really?
Yes, I do. Only by maybe a margin of 15
enough.
or 20.
One is enough.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's a lot of people. Keir Starmer has rediscovered the fact that Tony Blair was only successful because he tried to find a compromise between socialism and capitalism. And that's why he won 3 elections. And Keir Starmer isn't immune to that. And that's why people on the left absolutely hate Keir Starmer. They call him a red Tory or whatever that insult is.
Yeah,
and there'll be lots of people. I knock around with people of all different political opinions, and lots of people who I know are prepared to vote for Keir Starmer next time.
Well, that's because there's nothing else, is there? I mean, let's
Boris Johnson. But if Boris Johnson was on the ballot paper, they wouldn't.
Hang on.
Well,
before we get carried away,
before we move on, let's go on to find out what our viewers think.
This investigation going on.
Well, let's welcome our Great British Voice onto the show. Their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Right, where should we go to? How about Kidderminster?
Home of the carpets.
Yes, Kidderminster. You always talk about the carpets. It's John.
What that's known for.
John Reid in Kidderminster. John, nice to see you. John, what do you think? Liz Truss. Liz Truss, would you be prepared to bring her back? And if not, why?
When would we ever think of bringing Liz Truss back? In my opinion, Nana, we're watching the disintegration of the Conservative Party. And I might say your 2 guests on there are like the rest of the people who seem to be saying, well, how can we possibly win the next election? Let's all chase our tails and run around in circles and think of a different way of doing the same thing. And in my world, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer when the Tories are in control. And I think it's run its limits. It's been going on for long enough. And it's high time we had a change of government. And I think the sooner that happens, the better. Would Liz Truss be a valuable part of the Tory government? Not in my world, I'm afraid, Nana. Never, ever.
But the other world could be that the poor people everyone gets poorer. That's the concern, isn't it? The rich certainly don't get richer, but everyone seems to get poorer. Under the other version, I think that's what people are concerned about. Oh, well, John, thank you very much.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, you'd agree with it as well.
Thanks.
Exactly. Thanks so much, John. Lovely to talk to you. That's John Kidderminster. He's our great British voice. Right. Well, what do you think? Let's see what you've been saying. Jackie says, bring back Boris, the true elected Prime Minister. Here. I'm afraid he's the best out of all of them. They should never have got rid of him. Freya says, yes, but only, this is about bringing back Liz Truss, by the way, if you just tuned in. Freya's saying yes, but only for a short period, so to see if she actually gets growth going. When he says Truss is right, the Tories didn't give her a chance. They wanted the heir to Blair, Sunak. Yeah, I would agree with that. They did. They pretty much did everything to get him there. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. You can also stream us live on YouTube. Now, coming up just after 5, it's Outside. My celebrity guest is a mystery. She's a singer. She was the queen of the jungle. She was also famous for appearing in Asda and Iceland commercials. Anyone got this one? Come on. Stay tuned, though. Coming up after the break, it's Worldview. Russian expert Danny Armstrong will be live in the studio. Russia and Ukraine have reportedly engaged in a prisoner swap. We'll have all the details, and I'll also be getting you the latest in America with the suspected Chinese spy balloon. That's after this.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's just coming up to 9 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's now time for Worldview. The bodies of 2 British workers have now been returned to Ukraine as part of a prisoner swap. I think it's returned from Ukraine. Over 100 soldiers have also returned to Kyiv as part of the exchange. So joining me to talk about this, all things Russia, is our political commentator and Russia expert, Danny Armstrong. Danny, talk to me about this prisoner exchange.
Yeah, well, we were talking about it a few weeks ago. It's the sad news of Chris Parry and Andrew Bagshaw. They're 2 British volunteers who were involved in evacuation missions, in Ukraine. They set off to the city of Solidar, which is in northern Ukraine, northern Donetsk, which a lot of fighting is, of course, going on in the Donbass region now. Solidar is a very strategically important city. It's the two sides are fighting over control for that city, for control for some of the main routes that go into Bakhmut. Of course, any territory in Donbass is seen as essential to defend by Russia. Now, when they went to Soledar, they went missing, and a few weeks later, Yevgeny Prigozhin, which of course is the leader of the Wagner mercenary group, which is Russia's secret army, said they had found the bodies of the two men and published their passports and information. Now, back then, Prigozhin and Wagner Group said that the two were killed during fighting for the city of Soledar, when in fact the reality is they were volunteers who were killed in an evacuation mission. Now, this prisoner swap means that 116 Ukrainian soldiers have been returned and 63 Russian servicemen who were fighting in Kherson, in Mariupol, which of course was a huge hotspot at the start of the war.
They flattened Mariupol.
Yeah, well, it just shows for how long these prisoners have been kept by both sides. But yeah, the very sad news that these two British volunteers have been confirmed dead, and their bodies have returned from that hotspot. Of course, as we now know, Yevgeny Prigozhin, which is the leader of the Wagner Group, published the information, the passports, and what he said at the time was the documents that made the documents that they received to be able to fight in Ukraine. That was actually a falsehood. They were volunteers involved in evacuation.
So it's a year on now. I mean, it's pretty much not. I don't even like to call it an anniversary, because that almost feels like when you say that you're almost celebrating something. It's not, though, is it? It's just a year. This war's been raging, obviously. It did seem that Putin thought that it would be over quite quickly, and it's not.
No, that's definitely not the case. Of course, we're coming up to a year. It'll be a year exactly on February 24th. Now, the noise coming out of the Ukraine camp from Oleg Reznikov, which is the defense minister in Ukraine, he expects there to be a huge offensive from Russia. Of course, as we're all anticipating the spring offensive from Russia, the winter has just about thawing over there in Ukraine, which makes it very difficult to get anything done on the ground. Now, that time is sort of coming to an end. Reznikov says there could be a huge marking of the Defender of the Fatherland Day, which is on February 23rd. I was in Russia a year ago and I watched those rockets fly over Moscow. There were fireworks, and then a day later, fireworks were forgotten about, and it was rockets being fired from Ukraine, but landing in fired from Russia, but landing in Ukraine. Now, Reznikov said there's been around about 500,000 mobilized servicemen from Russia. That's the Ukrainian estimate. It's around about 300,000. Those troops will be fully trained now because the mobilization began in September last year. So we are expecting an offensive by Russia. Whether it will be exactly on the date of a year since the invasion, we're yet to see. But of course, we are anticipating a spring offensive, which will be sometime at the end of the year, if not March.
Danny Armstrong, thank you very much. He's a political commentator. Right, let's go stateside now, catch up with showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, let's have a chat to you. Now, there's this Chinese spy balloon, or this is what it's been termed as a spy balloon, even though the Chinese aren't saying that that's what it is. Talk to me about that.
That's right. We actually found out about it on Thursday, but allegedly the balloon entered the U.S. airspace on January 28th, which has the Republican side of the political aisle saying that the Biden administration was hiding this from the American people. It was successfully shot down on Saturday. We know that the U.S. rushed to collect the pieces. Nana, can you believe that that balloon is the size of 3 school buses? Here in the States, I imagine that translates to 3 of your big red buses. That's just floating around in the air. The American side rushed to try to collect that because they were afraid that the Chinese could be somewhere in the vicinity and collect the parts. They do suspect that this is a spy balloon trying to collect information on the States. And Nana, I mean, why would we be surprised the Chinese owns half of our land over here?
But the thing is, though, if the Chinese are clever people, why would they think they could hide something the size of 3 buses? I'm just saying. I mean, it doesn't sound like. I mean,
you know why? Because we're all looking like this, Nana. We're all looking down at our phones.
It doesn't make any sense, though. Well, you're right, though, because it's on the phones, and they made the phones, and if they wanted to spy on us, they could just take hold of our phones. They don't need to put a balloon up there. I'm dubious. I sort of don't think it was a spy balloon. What are the Chinese saying that it was?
You know why? Because we're all looking like this, Nana. We're all looking like this. 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 We're They just said that it accidentally ended up in our airspace, but they do say that our reaction was aggressive. They're unhappy about it, and of course, we have been trying to reestablish a relationship with China, and this just obviously worsens it.
Well, yes, it would do. I mean, if that is a spy balloon, it's the size of 3 buses, and they thought they could hide it. Seems a bit ridiculous. We should move on to Harry and Meghan. Let's be brief with them, because they did actually get an invite, because obviously the other event, which was a sort of unofficial 69th for April, it was actually a celebration for Anastasia Makeup in Beverly Hills, which they didn't get an invite to, even though all the big celebrities were there. But weren't they invited to Ellen DeGeneres' sort of renewal of her vows?
Well, Nana, Ellen was just canceled. Of course they're going to get invited. Ellen was recently canceled for and alleged to be a bully, like a toxic work environment was the big scandal from BuzzFeed here in the States. And Harry and Meghan have been accused of being toxic workplace bullies. Harry goes into detail about people crying on their desks at Kensington Palace while Harry and Meghan were senior members of the royal family, which, you know, does not help their cause. But yes, they were invited to Ellen's vow renewals. Apparently, Katy Perry, Jennifer Aniston, and Courtney Cox were there. And rumor has it that Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox were there to specifically make Harry uncomfortable because Courtney Cox was unhappy that he went into detail about doing mushrooms in her presence at her house.
Wow, God, yeah, oh my goodness, that would have been interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall there. And finally, what about Trump? Who's going to take on Trump? Is he now through? What's going on?
Oh, well, there are some really good contenders here. Ron DeSantis, everybody loves Ron, and Trump is going after his throat right now, Nana. We've also got Nikki Haley. You know, Americans love when we throw a female in the mix. All of a sudden, that, you know, there's a peak of interest. But there's also Mike Pence that could get really ugly. And then if Liz Cheney throws her hat in there, Nana, all hell is going to break loose.
But I heard that because it's diluted everything, so if it was just Trump against... If it was just, because there's lots of people, so there's Ron DeSantis and Trump and others, that Trump is more likely to win because the vote will be divided quite heavily.
I mean, I think so. He's got the biggest name. He's got the biggest presence. And when it comes to attack campaigns, Trump has got all the dirt on you, and he's not going to hold back.
Well, Joe Biden seems to be in a bit of hot water as well with his garage and all the documents that they've found. Briefly, what's gone on with him?
I mean, I think really, if we're looking at this, Nana, I think Gavin Newsom, who's currently the governor of the state of California, is being prepared to replace Joe Biden. I don't think that the party wants him. I think he's an embarrassment. And if I were being honest with you, I think that those papers, to me, it feels like a setup, that they have been building and building and building this up to try to knock him out.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Kinsey Schofield, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. That is, of course, Kinsey Schofield. She is a YouTube sensation. She's a showbiz reporter. Well, if you just joined me, where on earth have you been? It's OK, you've missed the first hour, but don't worry, I've got a super special guest for you coming up in the second hour. More to come after 5. So good afternoon, it is fast approaching 5 o'clock. I am Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, I'll be joined by a very special guest who used to be in the pop band Atomic Kitten. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good evening, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Liz Truss has admitted she was not blameless in what happened during her time as Prime Minister, but has criticised the lack of political support from colleagues. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, the former Premier claims she wasn't given a realistic chance to act on her policies. She says she stands by her low-tax agenda, calling it a break from leftwards thinking within the party. Ms Truss resigned after 49 days following economic turmoil that was caused by her mini-budget. Earlier on GB News, the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, defended the government's current economic plan.
I think that Liz's instincts are very conservative in the sense that we want to see taxes, lowered over a period of time. But I think everyone recognises we've been through, hell with coronavirus, which added, £400 billion at least of expenditure. We then had a war in Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices and inflation and been very, very costly.
Police say a key witness in the search for the missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, has come forward. Officers appealed for a woman seen on CCTV wearing a yellow coat and pushing a pram in the area where the dog walker disappeared in Lancashire last Friday. Now, they've called current speculation and abuse on social media towards those helping police as totally unacceptable. However, forensic search and rescue specialist Peter Folding told GB News there is significant doubt over the police investigation.
Nicola was last seen in the top field by the witness. There's nothing to say she couldn't have been kidnapped and dragged and put in a car and taken away, and someone could have put a mobile phone by the river as a decoy, or Nicola wanted to disappear herself. It just doesn't ring right. The amount of searches that's gone on in this river, the body, if there was a body in there, is no way going to go all the way down to the sea, not with us that current.
The UK's biggest nurses' union has offered to call off next week's planned strikes in England if the Prime Minister makes a new meaningful pay offer. Pat Cullen, the head of the Royal College of Nursing, says she's appealing directly to Rishi Sunak for the first time to avert the action. Nurses and ambulance staff are combining on Monday, widely predicted to be the biggest day of strike action in the history of the NHS. Nurses will strike again on Tuesday, with ambulance workers following suit on Friday. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has called the action regrettable. China says it strongly opposes the decision by the United States to shoot down a suspected spy balloon, which was thought to be carrying out surveillance of sensitive military sites. Fighter jets brought it down over the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of South Carolina yesterday. Earlier, 3 airports were closed and airspace restricted in the southeast of the country. Joe Biden had vowed to take care of it and later gave the order. China maintains it was a weather airship which had been blown off course. Ukraine says it expects a possible major new offensive from Russia this month. Ukraine's defence minister, meanwhile, says the West's supplies, though, are unlikely to arrive in time. But he says Kyiv has the resources to hold back any Russian offensive. It comes as the country's foreign minister announced that 12 countries are to give more than 100 tanks to Ukraine. He didn't name the countries, but said the aid was significant.
I can say that in the first wave of contributions, the Ukrainian armed forces will receive between 120 and 140 Western model tanks. These are Leopard 2, Challenger 2, M1 Abrams, and we are counting on Leclerc. This is not a low number. But we continue to work on both expanding the membership of the tank coalition and increasing the contributions of those already pledged.
And Pakistan's former president, General Pervez Musharraf, has died aged 79 following a prolonged illness. He died in hospital in Dubai, having been in self-imposed exile since 2008. Musharraf, who seized power in a coup in 1999, oversaw rapid economic growth in the country. He survived several assassination attempts, including from Al-Qaeda and other militant Islamist groups. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens, but now it is back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon. It is just gone 6 minutes, or 5 minutes actually, after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned. What comes next on The Outside? And today, my special celebrity guest is best known for being part of a very popular girl group that came on the scene in the late 90s. I remember it well. She was also crowned Queen of the Jungle in 2004. She has 5 children and was previously married to Brian McFadden from Westlife and was recently on Celebrity SAS Who Dares Wins. My mystery guest will be live in a moment. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? Now, according to reports, oil and gas giant Shell has seen record profits as the public fork out even more on their energy bills. But do we need to reduce our reliance on foreign energy, or perhaps think about the nationalisation of the utility sector? Is it time to take back control? I'll be joined by environmentalist Stanley Johnson and also physicist and engineer Brian Catt. You won't want to miss that. All that is on the way over the next hour. As ever, email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So, good afternoon. Welcome on board. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's good, though, because you've come in at a very good time, because it's time for this week's Outside. Now, my very special guest was part of an all-female pop trio and has also won I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2004. She's appeared in numerous reality shows, including Dancing on Ice and most recently Celebrity SAS Who Dares Wins. But away from the spotlight, she's a loving mother for 5 children. She was previously married to Westlife band member Brian McFadden, and she shares 2 children with him. She's currently engaged to fitness guru Ryan Marnie. Her life has not been, though, without its share of struggles. She has been declared bankrupt twice in her life, survived an abusive marriage, and has been very open about her struggles with her mental health. I'm pleased to say I'm joined now by singer and reality star Kerry Katona. Kerry, thank you so much. Hi, thank you so much for joining me. How wonderful.
Wow,
so
what an introduction.
Well, I mean, you've done so much. I mean, when you hear all that, you must think, crikey, I've been through a lot. Does that what go through your mind?
I actually think that would make a really great Netflix series.
It'll be better than Harry and Meghan, I can tell you that now. So let's talk about you then, because I remember when I first sort of came across you, Atomic Kitten, those are the days. You were a fabulous band. You were together for a little bit, but then you guys separated. What happened with that band?
Well, I was actually only in the band for a minute. I only did like 1 album with them, fell pregnant with my first child, Molly. I left and the band continued very successfully. I wasn't bitter at all. And they did really well. And then I think they ended in 2004 when I was actually in the jungle. And then we did a TV show called The Big Reunion. We all got back together. And as girls and women do, we had a falling out. And I think the 2 girls are still gigging now, Natasha and Liz, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, I remember that. I also remember that when you were married to Brian McFadden, I remember thinking, oh, God, she's so lucky. What a wonderful life. What was that like? he was in Westlife. You were like the sort of the couple.
Yeah, it was, you know what? I think from being a kid, from going from foster home, to then walking down this aisle to like to a member who was in a boy band and having all these celebrities around me, it was like a fairy tale wedding. It really, really was. And you know, the best thing about that marriage was I got Molly and Lily from it. And it was, you know, I've had many a marriage since, to be honest with you. I can't keep up myself. Got Google it half at time. But yeah, it was quite quiet actually, because the madness of mine and Brian's marriage started more or less when we divorced, when we separated. I actually left Atomic Kitten to become a stay-at-home mum. Right. I just wanted to be a mum and a wife. I didn't want to be rich and famous. That was my dream. That was my goal. And that's what I became. And then I ended up doing the jungle because I got a bit bored. And it just went crazy from there.
Did your passion to sort of wanted to be a mum, did that come from your own upbringing?
Massively, yeah. I've always just wanted to be a mum and a wife. But saying that, though, I wouldn't be able... I'm too driven. I wouldn't be able to be a stay-at-home mum now. I love my kids. I'm at home. I've got all 5 children in the house as we speak. They're hiding somewhere. I am a grafter. I'm a worker. I'm driven. I'm ambitious. I'm determined. I'm resilient. I do love to work. But my kids, and that's the reason why I do it, is for my kids. But definitely the reason why I wanted to be a good mum was probably because of my own childhood. I mean, I love my mum to bits, but it wasn't the greatest of childhoods.
What was your childhood like? Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, my mum, I mean, I get on great with my mum. I love my mum to bits. But my mum was a self-harmer. And she had a lot of mental health issues and drug issues. I ended up in foster home. My mum was with abusive men, which I kind of, like, learnt behaviour really kind of took into my adult years as well, really. I guess when I met Brian was like a knight in shining armour that took me away from England. But then when he left me, it all just came tumbling down. And, you know, I had a proper breakdown and ended up marrying, you know, my mum's drug dealer. I just had, as one does, you know, I just had a proper breakdown. I wasn't coping very well, especially back then in the day when the News and World was around. You know, the intrusion of the press was just, it was mind-blowing. I was suicidal. I couldn't handle it. So I turned to, you know, cocaine, which became my best friend at the time. It's the only thing I really had that was keeping me going. You know, Brian had left me. He was in Australia. I was by myself. I had these 2 children and there's press outside my house. It was crazy. It was a crazy, crazy time. And I can't believe I got through it, to be honest with you.
Because I can remember that time, because you could tell that when you married your second husband, that's Mark Croft, wasn't it? That
was it, yes.
Yeah. That didn't look like it was a very good relationship. just as an observer, I was watching going, oh, that doesn't look good.
You know what it was with Mark? I mean, I will not deny everything that I've married, I've loved along the way. And I've never been in many relationships. I've ended up marrying him. Bear in mind, I was only 18 when I met Brian. We were together for 7 years. And when Brian left me with Mark, I thought, oh my God, my kids are from a broken home now. And I was trying to fulfill my dream as a child, not so much worried about what they needed, but oh my God, you know, not realizing that I was enough for my kids, that I thought, oh, I need to get married. And Mark asked me to marry him. And I was like, yeah, that'll fix everything. That'll fix the problem. You know, I'll get married. I'll have some more kids and, you know, try and fix what's been broken. And that's a pattern that I continued to do. And then I did it with my third husband as well. I had another amazing child as well. This time around, I've been with Ryan nearly 5 years. And normally, Nana, at this point, I'm talking to divorce lawyers, but there's not a kid in sight and there's not a marriage in sight yet either.
But
so I'm doing something different.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. What do you think, though? So I imagine it is learnt behaviour. You said that you end up with people who seem to be abusive or don't quite fit the mould now. Do you feel that you've got it right at last?
I think I've had to go through what I've been through to be with who I am with today and be who I am today. People say, do you have any regrets? Got no regrets. Don't regret the drugs. I don't regret the bankruptcies. I don't regret the husbands. I've not made any mistakes. They've all been lessons. We're all human. The only thing is, all my lessons have all been in the public eye. I'm a human being. You know, I was a product of an affair. I was in 4 sets of foster parents and refuges. You know, the statistics of me doing well for myself are pretty grim. You know, the fact that I've achieved what I have achieved is pretty phenomenal, to be honest with you. I'm really proud of myself. I've been bankrupt twice. I've come from nothing. I've gone back to being a millionaire again. Not that that matters anything. The money in your bank, the size of your house, the cars you drive. The one thing I've realised is your riches are in your memories you create with your family. And that's one thing I've learned. But I am driven by always making sure that my kids are provided for.
Yeah, and I think
I've got, you know, yeah.
It's really good to see somebody like you having lots of children as well, because a lot of people in your position might have said, oh, I'll have an abortion, I'll get rid of that because I can't afford to do this. And that's why I like watching your journey and Katie Price's journey. But one of the things I remember really quite clearly was the time, remember that time you were on Good Morning Britain? Or was it Good Morning Britain or was it this morning?
Oh, no, I don't know what.
No, I think it was this morning.
What time are we talking about? I haven't got a clue.
Do you remember the time? You know the one I mean. You know the one I mean. I was like, what's wrong with that? What was going on with you then? What was happening?
I was on bipolar medication. Now, I'll be honest, I have shoved enough cocaine up my nose. I've drank till cows come home. I've no reason to lie. I was on bipolar medication, and at the time when I was at the Priory, it was trial and error to find there's no media with me. I'm all or nothing. So at the time, it was to find the right medication, and the side effects of the medication that I was taking was slur speech. And I took my medication so late at night that it still affected my speech the next day. And that is all it was. But at the time, mental health was never looked into. It was just, I got diagnosed with bipolar in 2005. My first antidepressant I was given to me was when I was 17. Everyone just automatically assumed, oh, Mary Kerry, she's drunk, she's on coke, she's on this, she's that. I've got no reason to lie. I'm the most open and honest person you'll ever meet in your life. And it was pure bipolar medication. Unfortunately, back then, nobody really looked into mental health. Nobody actually understood it, or no one even knew I had bipolar. So when they said to me, your speech is slow, what's the matter? I said, well, it's a side effect from my medication. I've got something called bipolar. Not once did anybody say to me, oh, okay, what's bipolar, Kerry, and what's the medication you're taking? Because we don't understand what this mental health is. So explain it to us. Because if I went on there in a wheelchair with degree burns on my face and my arm broken or my speech was slurred, you could visually see that there was something wrong with me. So you'd be like, oh, God love her, bless her. But because this is a mental health issue, you can't understand what's going on, and you automatically are going to judge me. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Because when I watched it, I think a lot of people thought, oh, she's drunk, or there's something, she's on something, or there's some... But actually, you were on...
I was on something. I was on bipolar medication.
That's supposed to help you. Yeah. So, Kerry, and then there was another thing I wanted to ask you as well, because I know you're now with the fitness guys, so you're probably doing loads of fitness and stuff. But didn't you go through a series of surgeries? Like, did you have? You didn't.
Oh, listen, I'm like a flat pat from IKEA. Me, I've been sliced and diced out many times. I come with a card. I come with instructions how to put me together in the mornings. I do. I've definitely got body dysmorphia. I've been in the industry since I was 17, and I recently had a tummy tuck a couple of years ago, which I should never have done, to be honest with you. But I botched it up, and I've just gone and got a corrective surgery done at the moment. But despite the fact my other half being as fit as he is and being a PT, he's also my business partner. So we live together, we sleep together, we eat together. If he tells me how to do a squat, I will punch him.
It's always the way. I used to go up something like that one, and I'd say that, and he'd go, "Don't tell me what to do." I'd be like, "Fair enough, fair enough."
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love exercise, and exercise is what actually saved my life.
Yeah.
And helped maintain my bipolar. And I quit smoking 3 years ago, which I'm really proud of. But there's one thing that comes along with quitting smoking. You put a shed load of weight on. And let's be honest, house prices are rising, gas and electric's rising. So I thought I'd get a bit of insulation on my body to save myself a bit of money.
Well, it depends if you replace the smoking for eating. You could eat an apple instead. Kerry, talk to me about what you're doing now then, because you're doing panto, aren't you?
No. I've just finished doing panto. Did that with my daughter. I've just released my third autobiography called Whole Again, which is available in all bookshops now to go and buy. It's a really good read. It's very much regards to my third husband, which is about domestic violence, which was very, very difficult to read, to actually write. And if that book can help one person, then it was worth writing. And I have loads of business projects coming up at the moment. A lot of them I can't talk about, but I've got my fitness app, I've got my dating app, I've got Kerry's boutique. There's loads going on, and I've got 5 kids, and I've got an Orion.
Well, listen, I'm really pleased to see you because you look really happy, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Kerry. Really good to talk.
Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye. Take care.
See you soon. That is the fabulous Kerry Katona. She's a singer, a reality star, and an entrepreneur. Well, coming up, it's our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? Oil and gas giant Shell has seen record annual profits. At the same time, many of us are struggling to pay our energy bills. So is it time to take back control of the utilities sector? I'll be joined by Boris Johnson's father, environmentalist Stanley Johnson, also engineer Brian Catt, to debate this topic. Do not go anywhere, you won't want to miss it.
We We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? Now, oil and gas giant Shell has reported record profits hitting over £32 billion last year, which is the highest in its 115-year history. Now, this comes at the same time energy companies are under fire for forcibly installing repayment meters in vulnerable people's homes. Sir Keir Starmer has previously proposed creating a publicly owned energy company to help tackle the cost of living crisis. So as our energy bills skyrocket, do we need to reduce our reliance on foreign energy, or perhaps think about nationalisation of the utility sector? So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? I'm joined now by former MEP and international ambassador for the Conservative Environment Network, Stanley Johnson, and also physicist and engineer Brian Catt. Right, well, I'm going to start with you. Who should I start with? Which one of you two wants to go first? I'll start with Stanley. Do you think it's time that we, having seen the way these energy companies are profiteering off the backs of our misery, is it time that we started to look at actually bringing it all back in-house?
Well, I can see the case for the first part of it, which is to deal with profiteering. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the amount of as it were, windfall gain which has come to the energy companies recently, it does seem to be perfectly reasonable for the government to capture that, particularly at a time when the government has been paying some fairly massive subsidies to households to make them meet their energy bills. Now, on the second part of your question, Nana, was should we bring things back in-house? No, I think here you've got to look at economics. You've got to look at economics. There will be some forms of the energy dossier which make sense for us to do. There will be other forms which make sense for other countries to do. You know, it's absurd to say we have to produce every sort of energy we have. Yes, we're very good at wind energy. We have a comparative advantage. I go back to, you know, basic Cambridge economics, the law of comparative advantage. Some things yes, some things no. So I would be against, as it were, an automatic repatriation. So we're trying to make all kinds of energy at every corner of the land. No. Concentrate on what we can do best.
Right, OK, let's go to Brian Catt. Brian.
In terms of windfall, yeah. It would be nice if the windfall's unavoidable because there's a, quote, global price for energy, which we can't control in the UK because we have very little sovereign resources. If we had our own gas, if we had our own, or more of our own nuclear, then we could control energy prices better.
When you say our own, would that be owned by us, as in the government, or would you say as a privatised entity?
I have this discussion with my MP, who's Kwasi Kwarteng, and he famously informed me that if we tried to control the price of gas that we owned that came out of underneath our ground, that would be communism. And I said it was common sense, Kwasi, because it's what happens in every country where they have natural gas reserves. It can go down to under a cent per kilowatt hour in Libya, I think, Russia, all these places. That you can. There is no global price for gas. So there's all sorts of things we can do. The other thing is, as far as the money's concerned, I would get, because we're not going to get rid of internal combustion engine vehicles for a lot longer than 2030, we need refineries that will produce petrol at a cost-effective price. And one of the problems is we don't have enough investment in new refineries because of the uncertainty of electrification.
Well, I think the economics are crucial. And frankly, if we as a country said we're going to devote an awful lot of time to rebuilding our own oil supplies and so on and so forth, the cost of our oil might be far above, you know, the market cost of oil. So we would, in the end, we would still be buying cheaper oil abroad. And do you see what I'm getting at? Unless you say the rule is that only British-produced energy can be sold in the UK, which would be a piece of nonsense. So I think economics is the key. But there's one other thing I think we really need to bring in here, and that is the whole effort as we plan our energy production, including our worldwide effort of energy production, will be indeed to meet some of the targets which have been laid down for us now by the global warming debate. And they are strong and fierce targets, and energy plays a huge role. Well, yes, and energy plays a huge role in that, and there's no doubt about it that the role of energy in the creation of greenhouse gases, CO2 and others, is absolutely crucial. I mean, it rises 20 or 30%.
But what about, you've brought in net zero. The government was talking about everybody having electric cars. They've got their target to stopping the production of electric, petrol, fossil fuel powered cars, new cars by 2030. I think it is in here in the Europe. It's 2035. We already know that's a totally unrealistic aim.
Well, here again, you raise a particularly good question, and that is how can we do all the things we are now planning to do absent the wider framework which we had within the European Union. That's why I say this idea we now have of scrapping, 4,000 EU laws on retained laws is complete nonsense. On the electric car point, I think a little bit of rethinking is going to go on because we are not making the progress we ought to be making on the weight of the battery. And second, the charging networks does seem to be something which we really need to work very hard at.
Well, I know Brian thinks a lot about those. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, you've got to double for the vehicular transport and treble if you want to electrify heating. The current infrastructure we have for electricity, you can look these numbers up in whatever it is, the BEIS website, it's not difficult. The other thing I'd say is the scare stories about climate, you really, really need to go and check the reality on those because basically temperatures haven't changed since 1998. El Nino was the warmest.
Well, 8 warmest years in the last decade.
The point is it's been flat pretty much since 1998, according to the best instrumentation we've got, which are the satellite constellations that NASA run. and it's 0.3 of a degree. It's cooled 0.3 of a degree in the last 3 years.
I've got King Charles's brilliant book, which is the Ladybird book called Climate Change.
And he's an expert, isn't he?
He is an expert.
He does absolutely nothing. He's got no qualifications.
I'm just saying, you can't argue with the king.
But that is the other point I wanted to... I can. It's big ears idiot. But the point about all of this is that the people who are making these decisions are making them on the basis of policy. They're not making them on the basis of science. The people who should be deciding on the economics and the physics and the properties of matter, i.e. the energy intensity of fuels, are engineers and physicists. And who did this?
Brian, we've had this argument before.
No, we haven't.
I mean, we have. I mean, you have, as it were, using a tough word here, you, as it were, denigrated the IPCC on this platform before, and I can't...
I was talking about politicians in this country who've got no clue.
No, but they are guided by the IPCC. Our politicians are guided by the IPCC,
yes,
and they're also, in this country, they're guided also by the work of the Climate Change Committee, which is a very serious body.
Which is John Gummer's operation, which has all those interests advising people on what to invest in while they decide what laws Parliament should pass to subsidise the same things.
I think that anybody who challenges the work of the IPCC and the work of the Climate Change Committee is on a hiding for nothing. I'm not going to be rude. I will not be rude to you.
You can be,
Brian. I'm absolutely not going to be.
I invite people to go and look at the facts.
Well, let Stanley finish.
No, I'm saying it just has to be incontrovertible now that these challenges are out there. I'm not saying there aren't difficulties in meeting them, and you've rightly pointed out the electric car one is a real problem. But that doesn't mean that the whole of our efforts in energy and in other sectors need not be geared to try and meeting those targets.
What do you think? Final word to you.
Who, me?
Yeah.
It's clear, if you just look at what the IPCC says, that the basis of their advice to our government, the policy guidelines that we signed up to accept, which is the excuse for doing everything Stanley's talking about, are wrong. Nothing they predicted has actually happened. It's as simple as that.
So with regard to energy and us owning the means of production when it comes to things like, actually taking it in-house, do you think, what is your...
Well, there's an interesting point here.
About a minute left.
Yeah, 1 minute. I am not against our owning means of production. I like the concept of a public sector, something which is driven as a private institution, even if it's owned by the public.
A final word to you on that particular subject.
What Stanley said about economics is absolutely correct. I would agree completely. We should do as much sovereign stuff as we can that makes economic sense. And then beyond that, obviously, we should go and get it where it's cheaper and outside of the world. And we agree on nuclear, which is the only easy, sustainable solution.
There we go. I'd like to see it ending on an agreement.
we have.
In the middle is always good. Thank you very much to Stanley Johnson. He's an ambassador of the Conservative Environment Network, and also Brian Catt, a physicist and engineer. Look, they're still fighting. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
After 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's now time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? Oil and gas giant Shell have reported their highest profits in 115 years. That's in its history of its existence, hitting over £32 billion last year. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to launch a publicly owned energy company run on renewables if Labour win the next general election. So with the cost of living crisis driving electricity bills up, does Sir Keir Starmer have the right idea? Should we think about nationalisation of parts of the utility sector? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to take back control of things like energy and water? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, also author and... What else are you?
What are you?
Whatever.
What are you?
Whatever. Whatever.
Hamilton. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Danny. OK, so we've got the big energy giants and the boss of Shell. They're taking on massive profits, and we are struggling in this country because of the prices of oil and gas.
Yeah, I'm a red-blooded capitalist, but I also understand there are aspects of socialism which I warm towards. And I look at the French model, I think it's EDF, and that's a capitalist country. And the nationalisation of something so vital to people's life, i.e. water and heating up our homes, I don't have a problem. The benefit of having a business run anything is that they're experts in that field. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that Tony Blair decided in the 1990s or whatever to PFI local healthcare, OK, because the experts were the people who could run businesses, not mandarins in London, in Whitehall. And that's my only concern, is that will it be as well, I nearly used the word profitable there.
Yeah, but the PFIs did not go down well at all, did they?
No, of course not. You have people paying 20 quid for a packet of aspirin. It's awful. So that was the theory behind it, and that would be my only concern. If it could bring down people's energy bills, there are people now who can't afford to put the Alecki on. In fact, there was a story last week about British Gas, actually third-party debt collectors breaking into people's homes to fit prepayment meters, which I thought was a scandal.
They're not allowed to do that.
No, exactly. So that illustrates, that's indicative of how some people are struggling at the moment. And I don't have... I hope you don't call me a lefty socialist, Mrs. Hamilton.
Of course not.
But that's how I feel about it. I don't mind a hybrid between socialism and capitalism.
What do you think, Christine?
Well, all my instincts are against nationalisation of anything. I mean, yes, of course, water is an extremely important thing. It is... energy is extremely important. Water, they're all important, but if nationalisation was the silver bullet, we would be nationalising our food supply, wouldn't we? But no, we get a much better food supply because it's done by private enterprise. We get competition and we get lower prices. So all my instincts are no, no, no to nationalisation because it doesn't work. I mean, Harold Wilson decided to nationalise the commanding heights of the British economy way back in the 70s, early 70s, 60s. And it was basically nationalised industries are inefficient. They're run by bureaucrats. They are. You want the competitive instinct. You want businesses competing against each other. Whether you put a windfall, and I'm against a windfall tax instinctively, but whether you put a windfall tax on is another issue. That's whether you tax a private company when they're making excessive profits. That's a kind of different issue. But no, I am utterly against nationalising anything.
But I mean,
just instinctively.
What if you put good people in charge of it this time? Because a lot of the time we've got just pen pushers in these nationalised industries. But what if you put really good, experienced people in front of that? Because the issue we have is in times of war, as we've seen, what happens to the energy prices in times of, say, disease. So, for example, with COVID, you can't get the things that you need because all of it is owned by... There's this global mechanism that makes a problem with supply of equipment and things. So surely it is wise for things that are crucial to life, like things like energy and water, to be owned by and exist in the country, rather than having to rely on a foreign source who could cut you off, as we've seen with Putin and Russia, at any moment.
I quite agree, but that means we should be making the full use of resources in the North Sea. We should be building nuclear power stations, which we have just very belatedly decided to do. We should be making ourselves energy self-sufficient as far as we possibly can, but that doesn't mean we should do it under a nationalised umbrella.
But then you, again, are in hock with the private business again, so they can charge what they like.
I think your example about if socialism worked or nationalisation worked, then we'd actually nationalise food supply. But if you walk down the local supermarket, there's a Marks and Sparks just 50 paces away from here. There are probably 250 separate business entities that stack the shelves. So to say, let's just nationalise the food supply, that's just impossible, because you have a fella who bakes the bread, you have a fella who bakes the jam that goes on it, you have the dairy farmer that produces the butter and the... You know, you can...
Are you getting hungry?
Yes, but it's...
Yes, you are yourself. So, but that's why your example, I think, was an invalid one.
But it's provided by private enterprise. It's private enterprise that brings all those things together and offers it to the consumer. It's not a nationalised industry that does it.
No, but you said if nationalisation was so good, you'd nationalise the food supply.
Oh, sorry, well, I would really I'd nationalise supermarkets, the food provision. No, not individual...
No, that's like communism, though. That's like Fidel Castro's
nationalisation is a step towards communism,
very much
in my view.
But why is communism in some things a bad thing? Because there are models that apply to different things. So applying that model to things that we need and we should own in case of war, or for example, water supplies. But we should own that. Somebody could poison the supply if, in sort of some sort of biological warfare. I'm not suggesting it, but I'm just saying that is one of the reasons why you should own these sort of things, because they are crucial to life. You cannot exist without water.
I mean, the difference between capitalism and socialism, capitalism is the unequal sharing of affluence, and socialism is the equal sharing of misery. And the economy works better, in my opinion, under capitalism. The profit motive is incredibly powerful. And I agree, we have got these slightly egregious examples at the moment. But don't forget, Shell doesn't make all of these massive profits in this country. They're a worldwide country. So it is a global profits that they're making. It isn't all from here. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, in terms of the utilities, should we take them back in? So things like water?
No, definitely not. No, I don't.
But what about, again, let's just throw a curveball in. What about the people who are struggling to heat their homes? And if it was a nationalised industry, then they wouldn't be struggling to heat their homes, because basically all of the electric and the gas would be fed through to their little one-bed maisonettes in Tottenham, North London. Currently they're freezing, they're having to put on extra layers, and the nationalisation would actually eradicate that. And all we're doing is we're just removing the vast profit. God almighty, I'm sounding like Jeremy Corbyn.
Because our money is going... What the government have done is literally given them money, which we're going to pay back. So they have given them money instead of giving us the money. So the energy companies are getting the money, and they take it off our bills for us, but the prices are still rising. So surely things like energy... I like capitalism, I like it as a model for certain things, but I think there are some things that should never be owned by the private sector.
I think, Nana, you're very sympathetic towards the nationalisation and assisting people in a socialistic world who can't afford to heat. Yeah. And Mrs Hamilton, I was wondering why you can't be sympathetic to very impoverished people.
Of heavens alive, Danny, of course I am. I have never said anything that doesn't make...
not said that.
No, I have not said that. Anybody who cannot afford to pay their bills, of course they need help. I am desperately sympathetic to people who are at the bottom end.
Well, let's nationalise it.
And the point is that what you need, the whole country needs to have more growth so that you have more money available to help the people at the bottom of the heap.
Let's nationalise it. Oh, my... I've turned into Corbyn.
No, you haven't.
I've turned into Corbyn.
He's a lot
but it's quite unfair to say I am not sympathetic to people.
I take that back, but the implication could be interpreted that you weren't sympathetic. But if I've misinterpreted, I'm sorry. Some people may.
No, what she was saying was basically it ended up being more expensive if you nationalise it.
The more prosperous a country is, the more it can help the least well off.
Exactly.
That's what we need.
That's a good point. Right, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got three today. I've got David Balm, who's there in Bedford. I've got Dr. Sashi Moodlia and also Brian Dugan. Brian, I'm going to go to you because your face is the biggest. You're too close to the camera, Brian. Put your head back a bit. So,
how are you, Nana? I agree with you. I mean, if we have commodities which are absolutely essential to life, energy and water being at the heart of that, and we have to have some system, surely, in our country whereby, great minds can be brought to bear in terms of a system that will make those commodities available to everybody, especially the most vulnerable in society, where they are not prone to being attacked in their own homes, which is really what it is, in order to install these pay meters, whatever it is. It's absolutely obscene, while there is scandalous profiteering going on the part of the big companies. And I agree with you that we should have something that can really return that to how it should be.
Yeah, thank you for that. Seshni, what do you think?
Good afternoon, Nana. Yes, I agree with Brian and with you, Nana, as well as Danny Kelly. I do think we need to take control of the energy and the water. If it's going to help, as you explained, Nana, if it's going to help reduce our bills, if it's going to help us in crises like war times and difficulties, and also if it's going to help like the current climate in terms of the cost of living crisis. People are struggling to make ends meet and pay their bills. So definitely I agree we should aim to try to do that. I'm not sure if the government is going to be able to do it, but yes, I do think so.
I don't think they can do anything. Let's go to you then. David Balm, your thoughts?
Hello, Nana. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Right, very simple. I'm old. I'm 64, and I remember what Harold Wilson did. And I also remember what Margaret Thatcher did. And I remember telling Sid, apparently, that about nationalisation. Unfortunately, nationalisation doesn't work. However altruistic the government want to be, it fails because it's run by committees, for committees, and no decisions ever made about investment. But we do need to have something in a time of national crisis, such as COVID, or what was happening with Putin, where the government can actually put limits on there. But as you said, Nana, Shell's profits are not from Shell GB, but Shell Global. So how are we supposed to nationalise Shell, which is not actually a British company? We can't do BP. It's not a British company anymore. It's a global company.
Well, just the answer to that, we could start fracking and get our own sources of energy and then bring them in-house and not sell them.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts. And by the way, 64 isn't old. That's what Christine said. So there.
I was 64.
She said she wishes she was 64. Right, listen, thank you so much. My wonderful Great British Voices, David Baum in Bedford, Seshni, Milton Keynes and Brian in Solihull. Right, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Today I've been asking, is it time to take back control of energy and water? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Dave says, nationalise water and place stricter controls on the energy companies. Ofgem is simply not fit for purpose at this time. Caton says, absolutely, or at the very least, take control of tariffs. John says, no, I can still remember when water and energy were nationalised. Absolute nightmare. Well, interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you so much for them. Let's move on to this story. This is what caught my eye today. Welsh rugby fans have sung Delilah during a Six Nations game, despite the song being banned from being performed at matches. It was removed from the London Welsh Male Voice Choir repertoire as the lyrics depict a man murdering his wife after she was unfaithful. Proponents of the move claim that the words glamorise violence against women, whilst others argue it is a common theme that features in music, plays and various operas. So what was this decision right? Was it right? Let's ask Christine and Danny. Christine, were they right?
Of course it wasn't. It's absolutely bonkers decision. I mean, if you go back through pop lyrics, a lot of them glorify violence and goodness knows what. I mean, no, it's absolutely crazy. And I was delighted at the match yesterday. The Welsh fans completely ignored the instructions and belted it out. It's a fabulous song.
It's mental. It's absolute. Where do you draw the line? One of Queen's songs was put a gun against his head and pulled my trigger, now he's dead. At what point do you draw a line? Thank God the Welsh fans have ignored this woke lunacy. But really, the Welsh Rugby Union, or whatever they are, they need to sort of row back on their wokeness.
They need to get their priorities.
Well, let me tell you where you draw the line. I think on a situation like that, it is a song about violence. I don't know how appropriate it is for a rugby match. I didn't know what it meant, but if you know what it is and you understand what it is, and then you know the words, everyone understands what the word's saying, then I'm not woke, but I potentially reconsider that one.
It's a tradition,
simply because,
Nana. They've been singing it for generations.
Yeah. What about something like Neil Diamond's Crackling Rosie, which is glorifying drugs?
Well, it depends where you're singing it. I mean, if you're singing
most people only know the first couple of lines of Delilah.
But if you're singing it, say, like at a celebration for something...
Rosé wine?
Well, I don't know. But if you're singing it, it depends where you're singing it. I mean, you don't want to glamorise drugs on on something where you're...
Well, you might as well... Half of the Beatles you would never play.
Yes, and you'd have to cut out half the Stones repertoire.
You can play it wherever you like, but this has actually been played at a match, at the end of the match. No. So that's why I'm saying I would probably consider where I'm singing this song.
You've gone woke on us.
You have gone woke. It's the most fabulous song.
I don't think you should stop playing the song. I like the song. The song's great, but maybe it's in an inappropriate
What a
position.
wokester.
Why? Because you can't trust rugby fans?
What a wokester.
What? No, because it's about murdering someone, isn't it?
But why is it not appropriate at a match where it is appropriate at other things?
What's that got to do with rugby?
That's irrelevant.
Well, it's got nothing to do... Supposing you had it at a wedding.
Well, I think it is relevant.
What's it got to do with...
No, it doesn't matter. You can have it for a wedding because you've chosen it for a wedding, but this is a rugby match.
Well, it's not for a wedding when man's
time now.
I think
it's time for Supplement Sunday. I've gone woke, apparently. I don't think so. I'm just using my common sense.
We'll deal with you later.
Oh, yes. God, that's a bit scary. Well, my panel and I discuss some of the topics that have hit the headlines and caught their eye. I'm joined by broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, Danny, we'll start with you. It's about doggy bags.
I need my reading glasses. Dogging is back. Sorry, the doggy bag is back. Once considered a vulgar Americanism, diners in Britain are increasingly taking their restaurant leftovers home. OK, so...
I do that all the time.
Well, of course.
Yes, of course.
Of course, but
you do it all the time.
Of course I do, and I finish it off in the taxi on the way home. If you can't eat any more at the table, particularly Chinese and Indians, because they're used to it, and as long as we don't follow their 25% tipping stupidity, I'm happy with this Americanism.
Right, Christine, your story.
No,
You've got one.
Couldn't agree more about doggy bag.
Your
I was
story.
introduced to it in America about 30 years ago. Brilliant. My story is the Grammy Awards. I mean, the wildly lavish Grammy gift bags that are packed with $60,000 worth of items, including $18,000 worth of liposuction, fat melting. This is people like Beyoncé and goodness knows who, and Adele are getting all this. The co-designer Lash Fairy, the theme for this year's gift bag is more is more. So they get a robot dog, a showerhead hose, some jewellery, a bugger booster. It's extraordinary. I mean, this vastly... A Nerf gel gun.
Oh,
listen.
Is it lipo or lipo?
I don't know. Listen, I've got my supplement. Have a listen to this.
Melting,
listen, you want to hear this one because now my supplement is about an injection that could boost your sex drive for men and women. Now, scientists at Imperial College London gave 32 men and 32 women a hyperactive sex sexual desire disorder treatment hormone, and it's called kisspeptin. Now, the findings show that kisspeptin improved sexual processing in the mind of both women and men and boosted brain activity in key structures of the sexual brain network, whilst also increasing
penile rigidity.
I didn't say that. The rigidity by 56%. That's what it said.
When you sit next to a beauty like Christine Hamilton, you don't need any assistance with your penile rigidity.
Hang on, wait.
Daddy!
This is lunchtime. Some people are eating. Look, I think I've had enough of this.
Oh, dear, what with Harry losing his whatnot in the field behind our local pub.
Give me 3 of those injections, although... but I'm a woman, I don't have a penis. That's the only problem. Right,
sure?
Well, on today's show, we've been asking, don't ask Keir Starmer that, would you take Truss back? And according to our Twitter poll, 53% of you said yes and 47% of you said no.
That's interesting.
Thank you so much to my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you very much to you. And also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly.
I'm off for an injection.
Yes, give me 3. And thank you to you at home for your company. I'll see you next week, same time, same place, on Saturday at 4. I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy your week.
Hello again. Looking ahead, and there will be some wet and at times windy weather across northern parts, but further south it's going to stay drier and brighter, but with the risk of some frost and fog by night. Taking a look at the bigger picture, and you can see this weather front waiting out in the Atlantic. This is going to push towards the UK as we go through the next 24 hours or so, but at the moment we have this whacking great big area of high pressure across us, and that's why it's been such a settled day for most. Staying fine across much of England and Wales as we go through this evening, and with some clear skies through much of the night too, but a much cloudier picture across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, some blustery gusty winds and also a few spots of drizzly rain too. As a result of the cloud, it's going to stay quite mild here, but with the clear skies for England and Wales turning cold with -4, -5 possible, so a fairly widespread frost and some freezing fog patches to watch out for first thing on Monday morning. Through Monday itself then, a bright start for much of England and Wales, but that thicker cloud towards the northwest is gradually going to encroach its way in, so many places turning a little bit cloudier, but I think it will stay sunnier towards the southeast, and here temperatures doing similar to today really, so highs of 9, possibly 10 Celsius. Also could get into double figures across the far north of Scotland because of that southerly wind. We could see some breaks across northern Scotland, but most places here staying quite cloudy. Through the end of the day on Monday, that weather front I mentioned earlier is going to push its way in, so a spell of more persistent rain and some strong winds reaching the far northwest of Scotland as we go through the night. Cloud keeping things quite mild here, but across England and Wales, again where we have the clear skies, it's once more likely to be a pretty chilly and frosty night. Again, temperatures getting to lows of -4, -5 perhaps, and again some freezing fog to watch out for as we go through Tuesday morning itself. Now, taking a look as we go through the rest of this week, and it is going to stay quite changeable at times across northern parts, so some further rain to come, and it will be a bit windy too, but always dry and brighter towards the south. But here there is the risk of some frost and fog. Bye-bye.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.